Avatar, The Last Airbender, literally shaped my childhood. It could have actually been the reason for my interest in philosophy. The second Avatar, Legend of Korra, was honestly ass. I did not like it. I did like the advanced fighting scenes in some episodes with Zahir, but that's it. Anyway, this is not a review of Korra, but a video about the genius behind the show. I don't know if it was made intentionally or not, but all the antagonists in the show are the way they are because of a specific understanding of politics and values. Let's explore why the antagonists in Korra have the values they do and why this makes the show so incredibly interesting. But before we start, consider to subscribe and click the bell button to not miss any of my newest videos. Your support helps me to make more, better, and more consistent content. Alright, let's get started. When talking about political views and how they shaped you, you probably are thinking of a two-sided political model. The most common model, especially if you're American, is probably that there's a left and that there's a right. You are a caring person, you believe in a social safety net and have progressive ideas, you're considered left-leaning. While ideas of no change, rational thought, and restrictions to new ideas are considered right-leaning. For example, you view every human as equal and you want to care about people beyond your borders, so you're open to immigration from places in the world that are not as lucky as the place you live in. You're probably left-leaning. You view that the integrity of your country, your identity, and culture has to be preserved. Therefore, you might not agree with letting everyone into a place you live in from other places in the world without a proper check. You're most likely right-leaning. The point is that there is no good or bad in the ideas we believe in and that our politics is not determined by rational thought but rather by our values. There is three main values, which are equality, stability, and freedom. And these values are not bad or good on their own. If you believe in stability as your highest value, you're right-leaning. If you believe in equality as your highest value, you're by definition left-leaning. But what about freedom? Why is it that so-called libertarians that believe in lower taxes, smaller government, and general freedom are either thrown into the same boat as the right, like right-wingers, or sometimes referred to as centralists? Well, that is because the political two-sided model and even the quadrant model is wrong. It's not completely wrong, but it's flawed. Since it doesn't portray the entire picture, a more advanced and more accurate model would be the political triangle, which explains exactly why we have our differences. In the model of the political triangle, there's three main values: freedom, equality, and stability. And the antagonists in The Legend of Korra represent an perversion or an extreme version of each side of that triangle. And that's just so mind-blowingly interesting to me. That's why I'm making this video, so I want to share with you. So the first antagonist in The Legend of Korra was the masked man called Amon. His group and political movements literally called themselves the equalizers because their highest value is, you guessed it, equality. If we look at the political triangle, we see that the politics of the value equality in its most radical form would be communism, which states that competition is cruel. It divides people into winners and losers. By creating a totalitarian monopoly, we can end cruelty. This value manifests into Marx-Leninism in the real world. Basically, equality in its highest and most radical form. The politics of such belief in the real world would be communism. That's why the equalizers in the series are portrayed as such, with red flags, the fist, and the march forward for equality. So how come they have that value? Well, the goal was to bring down benders to the level of non-benders or elevate the non-benders and bring down benders to a level where they both are equals to each other. And believe it or not, it's the same for you. If you're young and you were not responsible in your life and you have been taken care of all your life until now, you were a kid or a teenager till now, you're most likely to value equality. Student loan forgiveness, free this, free that. But when you grow older and pay taxes yourself and have a family and be responsible for you and yours, you're most likely to lean more towards stability and freedom. We adjust our values based on the circumstances we live in. The second, and in my opinion, most interesting antagonist was Zahir. Zahir was an anarchist, and his highest value was freedom. Freedom, in its most extreme form, would be anarchy, where you have ultimate freedom but no stability nor equality. What you have to understand is that the three main values, equality, freedom, and stability, are mutually exclusive. If you want more equality, you have less freedom and less stability. At the same time, if you want to have more freedom, like in Zahir's case, you will have less stability and less equality. The main values are mutually exclusive. What was Zahir's philosophy? It's pretty obvious that Zahir's philosophy is anarchy. All anarchists are opposed to any political, social, and economic order built on the basis of authoritarian hierarchy. This is what we can see in the show based on Zahir's actions and him explaining his philosophy. Zahir, however, was short-sighted. In his action tearing down the leaders of the world, he didn't think of the consequences of killing the Earth Kingdom's queen. However, tyrannical and oppressive the city Ba Sing Se was under the rule of the Earth Kingdom's queen, her death created a power vacuum. Remember what I tried to touch on earlier? Our values form depending on our circumstances and our place in this world. All three main values are mutually exclusive, and if you push one value too far, the pendulum will swing that much harder into the opposite direction back. In the case of the power vacuum created after the death of the Earth Kingdom's queen, the people had freedom, yes, but that also meant no stability. And this brings us to the third antagonist, Kuvira. Kuvira filled in that power vacuum with another extreme, ultimate stability. In the show, Kuvira was presented as the one force that's supposed to unite the entire world under her empire and her force. Stability is an interesting value because if you view our human history, we were mostly ruled upon through kings and dictatorships. Yes, these structures of power ensure the longest living empires and give stability, but the drawbacks are no freedom and no equality, with literally one person or one party at the top owning everything and the remaining 99% being literal peasants. The interesting part of this show is that all antagonists demonstrated a perversion or an extreme of these three values, which are by themselves not good or bad. And the avatar represents holding these three values in balance. So he's basically right in the middle of that triangle. I want you to understand that the key factor here is that there's no good or bad values. And yet most people, including myself sometimes, think that the world would be a better place if everyone supported my or your value and views. Views that are a product and manifestation of what your value is. What the legend of Korra teaches us is that the problem is not that we have different values, but the problem is that we force those values upon others in the hope to create a better world. Aman, Zahir, and Kuvira all represented a perversion of the three main values, and it wouldn't have been a problem if they didn't try to force these values down the throat of others with other values. The issue is a very real issue and literally the source of conflict in our own world. Think of the Western conflicts in the Middle East. Was it about oil, economic power? No, it was to establish a pro and more Western-friendly Middle East. And how was it done? Literally by us forcing our values, democracy, feminism, Western ideology in general, down the throats of people with different values. We did it by force. All we have to do is what the Avatar was trying to do, which is create a world where everyone can live according to their values without bothering others, forcing them to accept your values. The three extreme forms and manifestations of values in the real world are communism with equality as its highest value, which states that competition is cruel. It divides people into winners and losers. By creating a totalitarian monopoly, we can end cruelty. This value manifests into Marx-Leninism in the real world. The second corner of the political triangle is individualism, with freedom as its core value. It states that human freedom from the collective is the ultimate value. This value manifests itself as anarchy in its highest form in the real world. And in the third corner, we have absolutism with the core value of stability, which states that humans can be property. Emperors own the kings own the lords, and the lords own the subjects. Thus, the emperor has a personal direct interest in the prosperity of the empire. We cannot determine a certain value to be good or bad. It's completely subjective. Our values are subjective. But what we can do is to measure the manifestation or outcome of implementing those values in the real world. I'm a minarchist and believe in freedom as my highest value. I believe in the smallest government possible, but I don't believe in no government at all, because I acknowledge that most people and their values are not freedom for various reasons. That doesn't make them bad people, they just have different values, which are subjective. To be free means to be responsible, and most people are simply not. They would rather have less freedoms in favor of being taken care of by the government. I also acknowledge that in a full-blown anarchy, a group of people with force will emerge and form a government anyway. This is human nature. So I don't bother wanting to have anarchy. One example of responsibility and freedom is how we manage our money. For example, most countries have a form of a retirement plan set up by the government. In Singapore, for example, the government forces you to invest either into development, into the own country, or into asset-based retirement plans. You are forced to invest a certain amount of your money for your retirement. In my perfect world, this is very parental and I don't need to be forced, as I can take good care of my own investments and my own retirement because my highest value is freedom. I'm responsible for my own money, and if something goes wrong, I can only blame myself. But most people are not responsible with their money, and they don't save and invest for their retirement. And if they end up poor, they will not blame themselves and vote other people's money. So a form of stability is needed to prevent exactly that at the cost of some of our freedoms. That was the best example I could come up with explaining the dynamic to you. Well, that's it. That's it with my video. I hope you learned something, and please like and share my content for more. And by all means, please leave a comment and let me know what you think. And if you like the format of these types of videos on my channel. If you do, I would love to make more.